And good evening and welcome to the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast. A lot to get to here tonight on this edition of the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast. Chiefs losing to the Cincinnati Bengals, 3 wins in one calendar year. Pretty much says it all. We'll get into who is the better team, where the Chiefs rank in the AFC now. Should Andy Reid have gone for it on 4th and 7 in the fourth quarter? Kelsey, reckless. Or just a good defensive play. Justin Reed is on Twitter. Good thing, bad thing. Was the Chiefs' defense exposed? Is the offensive line going to get exposed in a big way come postseason? Who is the AFC's best? Denver win predictions. We've got it all. It's coming up next here on the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast.
You're listening to the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast, the most in-depth analysis of the Kansas City Chiefs on planet Earth. Breaking down the Kansas City Chiefs like no one else can. Red, Gold, and Bold is hosted by Jeff Chadiha, Eric Eager, and Soren Petro. The Red, Gold, and Bold podcast is proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, Kansas City's nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear in Kansas City since 1994. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor, all things parking lot. Now, here are your hosts, Jeff Chadiha, Eric Eager, and Soren Petro.
All right, let's get to it. Jeff, let's start it up. The Cincinnati Bengals, 3 times, 1 calendar year, the Bengals have taken down the Kansas City Chiefs. What do we have here? Is it time for everyone in Kansas City to get over themselves and admit the Cincinnati Bengals are just a better team?
Well, first off, are we paying Curtis for that intro? That was Curtis, wasn't it?
I know a professional voice
guy. Does he get the cut of this?
I know a professional voice guy. I got it done. You know,
okay.
All right. Maybe it's he's a minority investor in the company. How about we go with that?
All right, that works. Yeah, I mean, the Bengals are better right now. I mean, they've been playing at a high level. I can't watch a team lose 3 times and make an argument that they are a better team, a team that keeps winning. And for me, it's like they know how to win these games, and 2, I said it last week. I said it to Sam McDowell when I was in the press box at the game. It's just a bad matchup, and for whatever reason, Zach Taylor and Lou Anarumo, the Bengals defensive coordinator, have a really good bead on what the Chiefs want to do offensively and defensively. I think that their receiver core makes it really easy for Joe Burrow to know what he wants to do. He plays with a ton of confidence anyway, but against this team, he has a high level of confidence. And then the Bengals make the breaks. I mean, they have found a way to get key turnovers in all these games. And that's not, I think, luck anymore. I think they have a knack for making it happen. And I think they play with a chip on their shoulder. And so if you were to go down the roster and say, look at this team and compared to the Chiefs and say, who would you take at every position? I think outside of quarterback, which would be, it's not a stretch to say Burrow's in the same league as Patrick Mahomes. Kelsey's clearly a superior tight end. Chris Jones is the best interior player in football right now. Outside of that, the Bengals are winning a lot of those debates. And so better personnel, better coach in the game, and they show up more than the Chiefs show up in these games.
Yeah, you got to one that I want to get to here in a second. Eric, this is going to be painful. I know it's going to be tough. Are you ready to say that the Cincinnati Bengals are just a better football team?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like for one, the Bengals are much better than they were last year, right? Are we all going to agree on that fact? Like, I think the team that beat the Chiefs in Cincinnati was beating a worn-out team, right? A team that started 3-4, had won a bunch of games in a row, and kind of made mistakes, right? The team that beat the Chiefs in the AFC Championship game, that team, in hindsight, that team played so much against Buffalo, so hard against Buffalo. They came out and tried to knock out the Bengals in the first half. And I think when they didn't get the touchdown at the end out of Hill, they kind of faded away, right? They kind of ran out of energy. This Bengals team beat the Chiefs, they beat them. And they played better than them. right? Like, I think you guys can make an argument that all the breaks, most of the breaks went in the Chiefs' direction. Not breaks, but like Carlos Dunlap gets a really, really good stop on a 4th and 1 at the end of the half, right? Like that game goes from 14-10 to 21-10. It's a different story, right? You had Andy Reid. I think he should have went for the first 4th down in the red zone, but most people wouldn't have, so I'm not going to give him a ding. But he goes for 2 4th downs, one the first half, one the second half. Those end up in touchdowns, right? Like that's 8 points that your coach gets you through decision making. Tyler Boyd drops a touchdown pass that hits him in the face. All of the breaks were going the Chiefs' way, and it took one mistake for them to kind of piss that whole thing down their leg in the Kelsey fumble. To answer that question, I just think execution errors happen. Obviously, they happen a lot more in early parts of Kelsey's career than they have now. But you absolutely that lost the game for them, right? I mean, the Bengals. In that game, there was never a time where I thought the Chiefs had control of that game.
Yeah. By the way, I'd like to note this common theme here. Brett says Chiefs and Bengals play without Eric in attendance and see what happens.
It runs deeper than that because I did not realize this. I don't, Petro or Chadiha, did you notice when they asked when was the last time the Chiefs won in Cincinnati? Was 1984. I was born I was born in 1986. So me being on this world has been prohibitive to the Chiefs winning in Cincinnati. Not only just me being in the stadium, but me being in the same atmosphere has produced issues. So I don't know how guys, do I just not go to games anymore? Do I go to a Houston Texans game against them? Because I went to the Colts, and the Colts are dog shit. And I went to that game, and the Chiefs lost that game. I know I'm going to throw away the one swear word we have, but I put this thing to the test.
By the way, I love that. Just to let everybody else in on it, we try to curb that so we don't have to put an explicit rating on the podcast. And Eric is like determined to get one. I'm like, listen, just hold it to 1. So now he's made it's a rule. I'd prefer it be 0. Right, even though we all slip from time to time because we know we can get away with it, but we have
back when Dennis Miller was a good comic, he always had the well-placed swear words. I always appreciated it, and so I will not let them go in vain anymore. But I felt like just to explicitly talk about, I went to a Chiefs game where they were favored by a ton. Actually, in fact, they were favored by 7 in the last Bengals game before this one, the Colts game here. I'm not going to games where they're supposed to lose, boys. I'm going to normal games, and they're losing. So, yeah.
Yeah, I like this. Eric making his case to be the first human on Mars. So if we can get Eric to Mars, the Chiefs will win in Cincinnati. By the way, if you're catching us via the podcast later, thank you. Number 1. 2, you can be a part of the conversation Tuesday nights at 9. We stream the podcast live. You can be in the conversation, see the chat room there on Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook. Also catch it on LinkedIn and Twitter as well. Look, I'm ready to admit it. I made, Jeff got a preview of what my show open was going to be. He was in doing his hit with our morning show at 8:10 and came by to record something with Curtis. And Curtis said, I'm on the phone with him. Anything you want to say? Jeff goes, I want to know if he's ready to admit the Bengals are better. I said, it ain't going to take much. It ain't going to take much for me to admit it. And it is. And listen, I think Cam makes a great point. He said right here, Kelsey fumbling and Bucker missing that field goal were the 2 biggest plays of the game from a Chiefs perspective, right? Like from a Chiefs perspective, they were. The Bengals might say, no, the 2 biggest plays of the game were T. Higgins taking one off his face mask. That would have been 7 more points, and nobody blocking Carlos Dunlap. That could have made it 14 more points, and we kicked your ass, right? It's all relative to how you look at the game. But to Cam's point, if the Chiefs make those plays, they very well could win this game 30-27. What is it, 30-27, or was it 27-24?
27-24.
Yeah. So the Chiefs could have won it 30-27. Maybe they go on to get a field goal after the Kelsey non-fumble, if that's what it ended up being, and if Bucker makes a 55-yarder. I can paint you a scenario where they win by 3, except for they've had 2 other close games that they couldn't finish. Good teams find a way to win close games.
But they had this same – we talked about this in the Chargers game too. We talked about the Chargers game being a close game, and why does every game have to be close? Well, McKinnon fumbled when they were trying to go from a modest lead to a 2-score lead, right? Like They
we
make mistakes like this in every game.
Yeah, but we played this scenario. We played it with the Rams, and we said that's why they're a very good team. Is that there were 15 points that were left off the board. This could have been 41-10. They didn't do it, but they can't make these kind of mistakes against teams like the Bengals. And they have made these mistakes all year. Yes, against the crappy teams, they can get away with it. But against teams like the Bengals and Bills, you can't. Patrick Mahomes can't throw a pick with 104 and 2 timeouts left, down 4 against the Buffalo Bills. He can't do it. But he's thrown how many this year? How many? I mean, last year it was easy to put it all on Kelsey and Tyreek Hill and all the fumbles, but some of his picks this year, I mean, and it just shows he's human. I'm not trying to run down Patrick Mahomes, but you can't have those kind of mistakes in these games. And the Chiefs have consistently made those mistakes. Sky Moore drops a ball. Travis Kelce gets the ball stripped away. And I think the part to dig into that I think is more of note is, so I think you get two evenly matched teams and one keeps winning the close games. Let's take a look at the guy standing on the sideline.
I mean, because I want to bring that up because I quarterback play is so hard to evaluate, right? Like it's so hard to kind of separate. In my opinion, it's hard to separate the Jared Goff Rams from Joe Burrow Bengals, right? And I think on Sunday we saw what that difference is. The Bengals are up 3 with the ball. And they have to get 2 first downs, right, to basically bury the Chiefs. And the one was a screen pass, so we'll do whatever. But like, think about this for a second. Do we think for a second that Andy Reid? Well, he might have, but a team with Alex Smith at quarterback does not drop back to pass the last 2 plays of that game, right? But when like a bad team, a poorly coached team runs the ball 3 times, kicks a field goal, goes up 6, and says, let Jesus take the wheel and make sure Patrick Mahomes doesn't get 7, right? They sort of like put the game in the hands of their defense. A great coach, and I don't know if Zach Taylor's a great coach, but I'm starting to come around. A great coach puts the game in the hands of the guy who's leading his football. That's management, right? Joe Burrow is management. Zach Taylor's management. That end of game, both of them, the Bengals game in Cincinnati last year, the Bengals game in Cincinnati this year, both of those games were master classes by Zach Taylor in terms of trusting a franchise quarterback to win a football game. And it was, and honestly, when you look at the Chiefs defense, they were helpless to stop it.
Yeah, I agree. How about the coaching side of things, Jeff? I mean, I think Andy Reid, my big spiel today I said on the radio show was you got to look in the mirror. I'm very big on this. In any kind of competitive environment, if you want to be successful, you have to look in the mirror and see what's really looking back at you. If you want to blow smoke up your ass and say, oh, well, we're actually better because this guy and that guy and this injury and that injury, at the end of the day, you keep getting bested by the Cincinnati Bengals at the end of games. You can't get their offense off the field. We've had a couple of comments about the 4th down, not going for it on 4th and 7. And I think one of the things we can talk about, somebody said is Andy Reid losing a step. I think he's struggling with his current personnel to find a way to become extraordinary at beating the drop 8s and the shell defenses, right? He hasn't found a way to continue to be the greatest show on turf that way. He's still been effective. This was the number 1 scoring offense in football coming in. They scored 24 points at a time that everybody's complaining about it. But I think this is something, Jeff, you've hit up on a number of times. Sometimes you got to win ugly, right? Like they were being effective running the ball. That's not as pretty. Maybe you got to throw some slants. Maybe it's some underneath crap. Maybe it's a bunch of drag routes. The Julian Edelman would run back and forth across the screen, catching the ball for 5 or 6 yards. It wasn't sexy. It didn't make people go ooh and ah. Nobody jumped out of their seat, but it sure as hell moved the chains. I mean, is it just an aversion to taking what the defense will give you? Is it as simple as that?
Yeah, I think it is. I think the Bengals, and I said this last week about Anarumo, I think he's got a great feel for the psychology of Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes in terms of what they want to do in specific situations. No matter who you are, when you play football, you have tendencies, right? I mean, that's what it was before analytics came around. It was tendencies. So what somebody likes to do, what they want to do. And for me, that game, we talk about all these plays that happened, and they were important plays, but that game began to turn for the Chiefs the first time I saw Mahomes drop back and start spinning around like he did last year in the second half. And that was in the second quarter. And it was just like he can't find somebody. And then he ran to the left. And then I think Henderson like chased him down and kind of basically was very disciplined in how he ran him down. And I said this on the show earlier, on the radio show this morning, was that when Mahomes escaped the pocket, he was running backwards. They weren't letting him flip his hips, get forward, see where he was going. And that to me was a big part of their game plan. It's not just dropping 8 and flooding zones. It's like understanding where he doesn't want to be. And understanding that if you take away Kelsey, then it's like, and we said this last week about Kelsey and stopping him, like they do so much improvisation. Once you take that away and you're off script and you where you don't want to be, it becomes harder to play quarterback. And so I think that was a big part of, it's been a big part of the Bengals game plan of understanding that this team is so sophisticated in what it does, but in some ways it can create problems for itself because when you're trying to improvise all the time, you can't rely on anything. Right? At some point, you need to know, who am I going to throw the football to? And if guys are 25, 30 yards down the field or they're where you can't get it to them or someone's in your face, it's hard to make that happen. And so, yeah, I do think that if you're seeing 3-man fronts and a spy, you should be running the football every down. I think that, and I think they ran it effectively. They should have ran it more. And yeah, so I do think this is on Andy Reid and Mahomes, and Mahomes too, for that matter. I mean, he actually played okay and made some great plays at certain times. But there was one play, there was a sequence where they threw a deep pass to MVS that got broken up, and they came back through the same pass to him and completed it. But it was, being in the press box, you saw the look before the play happened, and the Bengals were playing what looked like a cover 4. And they rushed everybody. They blitzed 7 guys and dropped 4 guys in the coverage. So they had 4 guys standing 15 yards off the line of scrimmage. And Mahomes, he completed it, but he threw like a 25, 30-yard pass when there were like 3 or 4 guys wide open underneath. Like nobody was covering these guys. And when I saw that happen, I thought, that's the problem with the Chiefs in this game. They want to do certain things, and they don't want to adapt to what they're being given.
Yeah. Eric, I mean, you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, I actually like the fact that Mahomes went back to Valdez-Scantling after he dropped one and should have probably caught the first one. And I think that, when you talk to people on the team, like there's a little bit of like Mahomes buying into his receivers part to that. But yeah, what Jeff is saying is true. Like, I mean, this team, the reason that they went 12-5, the reason that they ended up with the 2 seed, the reason they ended up getting to the AFC title game again and beating Buffalo was that they adapted, right? The Tyreek Hill, his average depth of target went down 2.5 yards, I think, or 1.5 yards. I can't remember what, but they changed their offense to adapt to what teams are doing. And now teams are not running the 2 high shells against them as much. They're running man coverage and they're challenging MVS. They're challenging Juju Smith-Schuster. By the way, like, are we talking about Juju's potential contract now? Like, 3-game samples, we got to be careful. The last 2 teams have neutralized Travis Kelce. Like, what are they going to do now, right? Can they get and I know they threw the ball to Pacheco a little bit. I think Pacheco's actually been pretty damn good the last couple of weeks. They're throwing to McKinnon a little bit. They have to adapt, right? And to Jeff's point, it was really good. I think that to notice that, because this team, their ability to adapt is the reason that they've won at the degree that they've won, and they need to do that again this year.
Yeah, I mean, I think they've got to embrace the winning ugly part of the equation. That's something that just has to happen, and I think they're so accustomed, and I equated it today. Listen, I love the stats and numbers. I can't wait for that Chiefs thing that comes out, 4 or 5 hours after the game. I sit there checking my email to be like, okay, who moved up where on what record, what was accomplished, and I love those things. And I think that the Chiefs are all like that too. Are we getting to 5,000 yards? Are we getting to 400 yards? How many straight games? Sometimes you just got to win ugly. You just, it's going to be a street fight. You got to just accept it. And I think that they've got to, maybe take some of these losses, Jeff, and have the loss hurt more than how good it feels to break records, right? Like
Yeah.
that's what this needs to be. Let's be clear. We're talking about a team that wins 75% of its games seemingly every year under Patrick Mahomes. They've never won less than 12 games. So there is a level of pick and nits that's going on here. But we're evaluating this team like a championship team, and sometimes championship teams, you got to be able to beat all the contenders. Not just the ones that make you look pretty.
You can't pray that the Bengals don't make it to you.
Right.
Like that, because I think that's where we are now. Like I do think, though, just from a positivity standpoint, like I do think that there's an edification that comes from a game like this, because you didn't lose. I think you got beat. Like they beat you and they're better than you. Like there's an edification to like the New England loss in 18. The Rams lost in 18. The Titans when they beat them. Like there's these parts of like, oh, we beat ourselves. No, this team beat you. You got to be better. And like I think that there's some edification to that. Like versus last year, where you look at some of the losses. The Titans one was the one where they got their butts kicked. But like the last Bengals game, people are like, oh, we got lazy and all this. Like no, in this game, you would have been lucky to win. And so there's an aspect of that which is, in my opinion, uplifting, which is a call to be a better football team. And like maybe that helps, all the stuff that Jeff talked about with scheme on offense and what the commenters are talking about with scheme on defense.
Well, and just as importantly, they neutralized your three best players. They won the game, but the three guys who were your biggest stars did not have the kind of impact they've had throughout the course of the year. We haven't seen that happen in a long time, at least not in this season, for sure. I mean, I can't remember a time when you had a game where you had those three guys, Chris Jones, Travis Kelce, and Patrick Mahomes, at least two of them doing something spectacular. And we talked about this a few weeks back about are they relying too much on Patrick Mahomes? And you saw that. You saw every weakness that we've discussed on this podcast about the Chiefs, except for the running game, got exploited on Sunday.
You listen to the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast, proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, proudly serving the entire greater Kansas City area, no matter where you are: Overland Park, Independence, Lee Summit, Leawood, Lenexa. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, Kansas City's nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear in Kansas City since 1994. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty. Find them online right now at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor, all things parking lot. Tell them you heard about it on the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast. Jeff, where do the Chiefs rank now in the AFC? They're number 2 as far as the playoff seedings go. Are they number 1 still? I mean, a lot of people still think they're going to get there because of the easier schedule than the Bills. But if we were to rank them based upon strength, where do the Chiefs rank in the AFC?
They're 3rd right now. Bengals are better and the Bills are better because they played them, and then they've lost to both those teams. I mean, I don't think records at this stage matter to a certain degree, but I think if you go by the eye test, I think you'd have a hard time arguing that. And it doesn't mean the Chiefs suck, by the way. It just means that the two teams that they're going to have to deal with in the AFC right now look like they could beat them in the playoffs when and if they meet. And I would say the same thing about the Philadelphia Eagles and the NFC, who I've liked all year long at 11-1. The Dallas Cowboys are better than they are right now, just the way they're playing football. And so I think what Eric said is right, and then what you said is right. It's a good time for the Chiefs to take stock of who they are and what they want to be, and to also let go of the past, to be honest with you. Like, this is having been a champion a few years ago, having gotten back to Super Bowl a couple years ago, doesn't matter now, because the two teams that they got to deal with, Buffalo and Cincinnati, they don't fear them. That's out the window. In fact, being in the Bengals locker room, you got the very clear sense that they were like, yeah, we meet again, same thing is about to happen. It's almost like, date myself here with Sugar Ray Leonard fighting Marvin Hagler back in the day. Like, Marvin Hagler was the bully and probably the better fighter, but Sugar Ray was savvier and knew how to win and ended up beating him. And I said this earlier too, The Bengals remind me a lot of the Carolina Panthers back in 2003, 2004 when they started to get going, and no one really wanted to believe they were a really good team. And I saw a lot of their games, and I would tell people, man, this Steve Smith guy is pretty good, and this defensive
Muhsin
front
Muhammad.
is really good. Muhsin Muhammad and the running backs they got, Stephen Davis and the who's the guy? Deshaun, what's his name? I forget the guy's name. He was number 20.
Deshaun Foster.
Yeah, Deshaun Foster, and this guy, Jake Delhomme. He's got some magic to him. He's great at the end of games. The Rams are way better, way more explosive. The Eagles, Andy Reid's Eagles, been to two AFC Championship games. McNabb, it's just like they beat those teams in the playoffs because nobody really respected them. And so, so I think they play that card really well in Cincinnati. And then Buffalo is coming back to what they were, even without Von Miller for a few weeks with this knee injury. I know that they've got some tough games coming up here, but they're going to every game that in their division they're going to play. The Patriots, the Jets, and the Dolphins is in Buffalo. They got the Bears and they got the Bengals, which is a huge matchup. They're going to be really in control of their own destiny right up until week 16, week 17. And so,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and so I think those two teams are better. That means the Chiefs can't beat them, but if you're asking me right now, what I've seen, those three teams that played, Chiefs are 0-2 against them.
Despite the amazingness of comparing the Chiefs, who are largely considered a finesse team, to Marvin Hagler, who was one of the most brawling and
I'm talking about the bully.
I know what you're saying. From the certainly a bully reputation for the Chiefs, but it is funny to hear that. Most people would say the Sugar Ray dance on the outside and look pretty and everything would be the Chiefs, but I loved it. The Hagler, Hearns, Leonard trio of boxing was my all time favorite moment in the history of the sport. So I love the bringing those guys up. But where do you put him, Eric? He's got him third. Where do you put him right now?
Yeah, AFC, you go Buffalo, Cincinnati, Kansas City, about the same. In the NFC, I agree with Jeff. I think you go Dallas, Philly, about the same. And then San Francisco, a small, below that. If you gave me a field goal spread with any of those teams, like all five, right? You give me a field goal with any of those teams, I'm limit betting the underdog in all those games. If you gave me the Chiefs +3 against the Bengals, I will drive to Kansas to bet that. If you gave me +3 with the Bengals against the Bills, same thing. You gave me the Bills underdogs against anybody in the league, I'm betting that limit. Like, it's just, they're so close. It's splitting hairs, and it's all about matchups. It is. Jeff does bring up a good point. Like, when the Chiefs beat the Bills last year, there's no one in the Kansas City locker room like, give me Buffalo again. Everybody's like, phew, got through with that one, right? The Bengals are give me Kansas City again. Like that's what you have to overcome if you're the Chiefs. And I think that's there's the mind, back to the movie Friday. He's got mind control over he's got mind control over the Chiefs. Like, I think that, that's what they have to overcome. The Chiefs know they can beat the Bills. I don't know if they think they can beat the Bengals anymore, which is tough.
Was 4th and 7 the big mistake, Jeff? They bring the offense off the field. They take the 55-yard field goal attempt. I heard the stat, 71% is what Bucker had been from over 50 yards. So it's not a ridiculous decision unless you consider, okay, that ties it, leaves time for the Bengals to go down and potentially score, which means you're going to need another score just to get it tied, unless you think your defense is going to come up with it. They did get the pick 6 against the Chargers. Their defense made a big play there. We have seen times where the defense has made plays, but did Andy Reid blow it at that point? Was that a decision that should have been Patrick Mahomes stays on the field?
In real time, I didn't see it that way. When he didn't send Mahomes back out there, I was a little bit surprised, but then I saw Mahomes limping. And so my first reaction was, well, Mahomes must be hurt. He must not feel comfortable. And there were still 3 minutes left in the game. And in that situation, you got 40 seconds to decide what you want to do. And what you don't want to do, which is an underrated part of this conversation, is burn a timeout to see if your quarterback's all right. Because you saw at the end of the game, you still needed an opportunity, if you were going to go that route, to save as much time as possible with that third timeout. And so I saw it as his logic was Bucker's made some big kicks. It's easy to forget now. 13 seconds, AFC divisional playoff game. We had to go out there and whatever hit this, probably the same distance or similar distance. It was a long kick. I forget exactly what it was, but he hit it. He can do that. And so you tie it up. I understand the argument that the Bengals offense was playing really well, but if you've got the best quarterback in the world and you can hold that offense to a field goal, then you give them a shot to go down and either tie it up or possibly win it with a minute to go and 3 timeouts. That logic makes sense to me. And also, you don't have Kadarius Toney, you don't have McCole Hardman. As great a play as Mahomes made on that 4th down play where he jumped out in the air and put it in the end zone, you needed him to do something spectacular to get 3 yards before. I just think the feeling Andy Reid probably had was, I don't have a play call I like here. My quarterback's a little bit hobbled. I got a good kicker. Let's tie it up and see what happens.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the unfortunate thing for me was when they brought up the field goal team, I was kind of like, okay, that this is a regular season game they're willing to lose is how I thought about it. And I was, hashtag I was there. And that's how I felt when it happened. Like I thought that the 3rd down play was a play that was run to lose. And I thought that the field goal was out there. And again, like I felt like they were playing with House's money and they wanted to continue to do so. But it was not consistent with how they had played the thing out. When the Bengals scored the touchdown to Chris Evans, there was about, I think, 8 minutes left, 7 or 8 minutes left. And I'm like, can the Chiefs take up all this time and score a touchdown? Because that's really how they win the game, right? And they were driving with what looked like that stated intention, right? Because they went from the 25 or so to the Bengals 40 in – like they took up half of that allotted time left. And I'm like, okay, if you're going to play it that way, you have to go for it here. Now, Bucker 71%, it was a cold day. And it was outdoors and all that kind of stuff. So I would probably put it at 66. But again, the worst thing that you can do there is be tied, in my opinion. And here's why. Obviously, if you pick up the first down 3, you're in a great position, right? Because probably given Bucker, the worst you're going to be is tied. But if you're down 3, we almost saw the benefits of being down 3 without the ball, because basically you can get a team like that to lay up. And I think most teams would have laid up for a field goal in that position and given the ball back to Mahomes. What it would have been 110 with even after they gave up the first down, they would have gotten the ball back with 110 left with down 6 with the best player in the league as your quarterback. Like that's not the worst outcome, right? The worst place you can be in is exactly the place that they were in last year, which is a tie game where the other team has control of the ball and control of the clock and can kneel out and beat you by 3. And you don't even, the best player doesn't even get the ball. And so I think that the hard part is I get what Andy Reid was doing, and I understand trusting your kicker and all that kind of stuff. And I understand the defense had actually played okay in the second, after the second quarter. They had done their normal thing where they suck at the beginning and they give up a bunch of field goals in the middle of the game. Then they gave up a touchdown. It was much like the Chargers game. And so I get all that. But mathematically, it was not a right choice. And so if Mahomes was healthy, which I think is the greasy wheel there or the sticky wicket there, is whether or not Mahomes is healthy. But if Mahomes is healthy enough to play, you go for it. And because, again, the best position is to be down 3 with the ball. The second best position is to be down 3 without the ball. And the third best position, counterintuitively, is being tied without the ball.
Yeah, and I think you make good points, and that's exactly where they were last year. And, of course, the Bengals ran out the clock. Andy Reid ended up facing a bunch of questions about whether or not he was willing to let him score, and he sidestepped them all and gave confusing answers. And that's what he did again on Monday of this one. It sounded just like the regular season game last year. And I do think the point is valid. Sam McDowell was sitting next to Jeff in the press box in Cincinnati, said that he saw the field goal unit run out there, that Mahomes hadn't even gotten up, right, to show that he was limping, and he was sending the field goal unit out there. I don't think it would have been the worst thing to take the timeout, let him get his ankle loosened back up, and then go for it. But I think the problem that Andy Reid has, this is where he's old school, is believing that your defense can always get it done. And there's no evidence that the Chiefs can stop the Bengals when they need to. None. And he added to that, even more so. Faced with that situation in a playoff game, he has to go for it. And I think it's pretty clear that the 4th and 7, he was going to, if it was 4th and 3 or 4th and 2, whatever it's going to be without the sack, he was kicking the field goal. He was already pre-programmed that he was taking the field goal. He'd hit the field goal range. They were going to put that in there. He was going to tie it up. And that's the wrong mindset because they don't stop anyone. They'd only stop the Bengals once all day, and they'd given up 50-plus yards on every one of the other possessions. There's no reason to think the Bengals are going to do anything but go 50-plus yards and put you down by more. The only evidence that works in his way is that they have sacked the quarterback more lately, but they weren't getting to Joe Burrow in this game. That just wasn't happening. Did the defense get exposed? Is that what we saw? The 35 sacks, 4 more than they had all of last year. That's all great, but a mediocre, at least by the grades, offensive line of the Bengals certainly neutralized the Chiefs pass rush entirely.
Well, exposed would suggest that I was all in with the defense, right? So to me, it's the same defense I've been watching all year long. And so, and we had this conversation about, Trent McDuffie and Snead and those guys, good players. But when you're facing elite receivers, I think it's hard to – I don't think Spagnuolo does those guys any favors by playing as much man coverage as he does. And I think sometimes you got to switch it up. Sometimes you got to look at what's across from you. I believe that, as I said earlier, that at no point in that game did Joe Burrow look uncomfortable, confused, concerned, whatever word you want to use that you should be applying to a quarterback in a game of that magnitude as a defense. And they had a game plan for Chris Jones. We'll double team him. We'll block everybody else. They had a game plan for the blitz package. We got 3 receivers who can take you apart. You got people who can't stick with these guys. Go ahead and blitz us to see what happens. It became so simple, so simplistic watching that game at different junctures of it in terms of how Joe Burrow was just – you could tell by where Justin Reid and Juan Thornhill were moving in the defense, in the back end of the defense, what he was going to do. And hey, if they stayed back, Samaje Perine, go ahead, do your thing. If they started creeping up, showing blitz coverage or cover 0, cover 1, all right, we're throwing it to Chase. We're throwing it to Higgins. We're throwing it to Boyd. And they got to figure out a way to deal with that. And so, yeah, I don't – and that's the same problem they have with the Bills. Same problem they're going to have with any team that has a good quarterback who can move and one or two really good. One receiver can give them problems. 2 is going to be just fits. And so, yeah, I think that's it's going to be an issue in the playoffs because they're going to see, again, teams that have those capabilities. If it's not even like on the lower end of this, if it's not the Chargers, the Raiders are killing people right now with Devontae Adams and Josh Jacobs. And you saw how they were when they played the Chiefs the first time. If they get in, it could be that kind of game with them too. And so I've always said this. I think they've got the ability to be the potential to be a good defense, a really good defense. But some of this is on Spagnuolo to adjust to it, and some of it is on them just improving the personnel, especially up front.
I like what Jeff said. He's never that bullish on the defense, and the statistics wouldn't say that you should be, although the average yards per play had crept up to a statistical, basically a tie for 11th best in the NFL, and it was trending in the right direction. We knew it would probably take a step back, all the numbers against the Bengals, because they're a very good team, and they're going to probably take steps forward based upon bad teams that are still to come, although, as Jeff points out, the Raiders are looking saltier and saltier there at the end. But did the pass rush get exposed? The fact that they could not get there. And did Steve Spagnuolo, to Jeff's point about what Spagnuolo needs to do, how come everybody else in the league is having success against high caliber quarterbacks, dropping 8 and playing shell defenses, and the Chiefs decide that every time it's not going their way, just blitz even more?
I don't know, man. I think there's a part of the fact that Karlaftis can't win yet. Dunlap and Clark can't win. It's all dependent upon Chris Jones, and like a sneaky thing is Chris Jones got his 10 sacks. He got his bonus. Like, we got to be careful about, the next few weeks for Chris Jones. And I also thought it was really weird.
Just on that before we move off of it, what was the bonus? $500,000, $1 million?
No, it was like $1.5 million. I mean, that's a lot of money.
Right, but you know what else is at stake? A new 4-year deal with $45-50 million guaranteed. Like, there is still a big.
But do you think that, like, in his mind, this team almost signed Orlando Brown to a big deal, boys? Like, Orlando Brown stinks. So I think Chris Jones thinks he's got this thing in the bag.
Okay,
but beyond that, one thing that was interesting, I know you talked about this on your show with Sam yesterday. The Bengals also just did a really good job on early downs, keeping Chris Jones off of the edge. Like, I don't remember Chris Jones playing defensive end much at all Sunday. And, and that is something that I think hurts.
Can we talk about that? Can we, again, not to interrupt you again, but before we go too far, isn't that one of the biggest things that happened here is that while both teams largely, they each ran it 23 times. The Bengals only ran for another like 14 yards. It was like 141 to 127, whatever it was. It was in the ballpark. They were effective on first down. On the down, Eric, that you talk about, you don't ever want to see anybody run. They consistently ran. I think Curtis said 12 of their 23 runs on first down left them with 2nd and 4 or shorter.
Yeah, they were effective. They were. Yes. The success rate was high, right? We talked about this,
which Chris Jones said last week. I sat there asking him about playing more D end and how it was kind of working, and it didn't work last year. And he goes, "Well, he pretty much kind of let the cat out of the bag." He's like, "Yeah, well, I mean, we don't ask me to set the edge anymore and turn the run in. Kind of like, yeah, I only go do that when it's 3rd and 12 and we know they ain't going to run."
And they didn't get, the drives where they were successful defensively is when they got a holding call, right? And they got a long yardage situation. When you don't get sacks, you don't get long yardage situations. I mean, that's a big thing. But when also, again, we talk about the run game, like the best run game is a success rate run game, right? When you can average 4.5 yards a carry, but if it's 0 and then it's 9 and 0, then you're at 50% success rate. If you get 4.5 both times, it's 100% success rate, right? And that, the Bengals were doing it. Samaje Perine's longest run was 10 yards on Sunday, right? Like it was all about kind of, and Nick Bolton, like he needs the players in front of him to play well. Derek Nottie is playing middle linebacker for this team half the time. Like he sucks. And I know Jeff goes to every game, and it's like, like when this is the first Chiefs game I've been doing in a long time. Like you see it, man. That guy gets lifted off the line of scrimmage every single. Like he needs to stop playing, right? I know they got Brandon Williams for a reason. I know they got Shelton for a reason. Like they need, because Willie Gay and Nick Bolton are not. They're physical linebackers, but they're not big, right? They hit, but they're not big. This isn't like Tracy Simeon, right? Like you need some defensive linemen to keep guys off your linebackers.
Yeah, I agree, and I think Derek Nottie is on roller skates every time he's out there. They've got to get bigger and more physical up on that line. And is that, just a case of them, Jeff? I mean, this is the look. You don't have the same kind of firepower that the Bengals do. You don't have you've got to drag. It's time for the Chiefs to drag somebody down into the mud, right? Yeah. And play a little bit uglier, and maybe not like the defensively. Just admit you're going to have to give them to the 20, and just hope that they make a mistake with, like I said, being less aggressive with the blitz and everything. Like we had they never make anybody punt. Right? Like
or turn them over.
Yeah. And offensive line wise, like acknowledge what you have. Like how many times do they have to watch Orlando Brown? They help him and he gets beat inside. I mean, they just don't seem to be able to, whether it's Andy Reid or Patrick Mahomes, come to grips with what they really have. And Andrew Wiley and Orlando Brown are liabilities. Period. End of discussion. Against good teams, against playoff teams, they're liabilities, right? That offensive line is the tackles. Let's talk about what it is. And certainly it was even more glaring with Joe Thuney out. Okay, Allegretti's a fine backup, but it hurts when Joe Thuney's not out. But the tackles are liabilities, are they not?
Yeah. I thought the whole offensive line got their ass kicked. I mean, we talk about Orlando Brown, but I thought DJ Reader and BJ Hill were just taking those guards and centers and just pushing them back into Mahomes' face like every other passing situation. It was just, and those guys are 330, 340. The Bengals have a really good defensive front, and they have the kind of ends that can give it's already tough for Brown and Wiley, but those ends in particular, they're athletic and they're smart. And I sat there watching Sam Hubbard play, and I was like, man, I really like this guy. I like how he plays. He's good against the run. He's versatile. He can spy Mahomes. He's always in good position. And then Hendrickson is the same kind of guy on the other side of it. And when they rushed, the Chiefs do a very good job of exposing edge rushers who rush too aggressively. And every time I watch the Chargers play them, I see Joey Bosa go flying by Mahomes and these huge lanes open up. Nick Bosa did it when they played the Niners. And when you saw the Bengals rush, it was, again, very, very, very controlled, very much disciplined, very much understanding. We know this guy's going to move around, but we want him to go to certain areas. You can go back and watch certain cut-ups and just see there was one play where Hubbard was rushing against Orlando Brown. And he just kind of like came at him and just kind of stopped a little bit and sat there and just watched Mahomes over the guy's shoulder and just to see where he was going, knowing, okay, and so that's tough to deal with when you're Orlando Brown. You have very limited agility. You probably have one or two go-to moves to handle a speed rusher or a gifted pass rusher. After that, you're in trouble. And so, yeah, they were able to exploit that time and again, because when you're rushing three and you're getting home, something is going wrong. Not just the limitations of your offensive line, but also the tendencies of your quarterback to hold the ball a lot. And as I said before, they knew if Mahomes is leaving the pocket, he's going backwards. That to me was certainly an important coaching point for them, and they made it happen all the time. There was no place for him to run and escape to as there was against the Titans or the Chargers, whoever else. His ability to run was nullified, and once that went out the window, the protection was screwed. There was nothing else they could do but watch him be under pressure the rest of the game.
Which baffles me how we can watch the other team's premier pass rusher eventually get pressure on Patrick Mahomes when he's 1 of 3. And yet Chris Jones doesn't seem to be able to bust through when he's 1 of 5 or 1 of 6 on an all-out blitz. That is amazing. The O-line, where are we? I mean, a lot of comments about Orlando Brown. It's more than Orlando Brown. They're very limited at the tackle spot. And as Jeff pointed out, they weren't particularly good inside either in this game. What do you make of it, Eric?
Well, Joe Thuney sat out, right? Like that's a $16 million guard that's on the inactive list, or you're not playing with Nick Allegretti. So like Nick Allegretti's a 5 out of 10 guard, and you replacing an 8 out of 10 guard. I think Orlando Brown, he's a better player when Thuney's next to him, right? So like that trickles down, right? The whole offensive line is all about weak links. And when you lose one of your strongest players, and I think Nick Allegretti is good. I think he should get a second contract as a backup player for this team. But it's not going to work there as well when Thuney's out. Orlando Brown's not great. He's not doing a good job. As you said on your show yesterday, Petro, my guy is not also hustling like that guy. There was a play I noticed where Mahomes was running and Travis Kelce just like stopped running, and Orlando Brown does it on every play. So like I feel like this has been the worst possible bet on yourself that anybody's ever made. And Andrew Wiley is what Andrew Wiley is, right? Like we're not mad at Andrew Wiley, right? It's the Chiefs' choice to play him, but it wasn't great. And the Bengals are good up front with Hendrickson, but this isn't like a murderer's row of players up there. It's one guy. Sam Hubbard's a nice little player. DJ Reader's a good player, but this isn't the O2 Bucks, and they should not be getting pressure with 3.
I'll add one thing to that, and because the Bengals offensive line has been taking a lot of abuse over the course of the season, and talking to their offensive linemen, they said the two biggest things that changed for them, aside from just them growing and getting more comfortable with each other, offense got more balanced, balls coming out fast. That stuff helps your offensive line in a big way. And going back to the run game, playing ugly, this was the kind of game the Chiefs could have helped their offensive line by being a little more schematically different.
Yeah, and I think it comes with acknowledging what your limitations are. I don't think Patrick Mahomes looks in the mirror and sees the same Orlando Brown that I do. He either sees a buddy or he sees a guy who he's buying the hype of him being a Trent Williams guy. He's not seeing the same guy. I mean, that's great. I got confidence in my guys, and they'll battle and all that, and they'll get beat. I mean, and Orlando Brown doesn't battle. I'm sorry. This snow job that's been done on this one, and I said it today, and I'm going to give you love here. I said it on the show. I don't know if you heard about it, Jeff, or heard me say it, but I said today, everybody's wanting to piss and moan about Orlando Brown, and everybody's bitching about Orlando Brown. And I said there's some people on Twitter who are talking about how much he's making, and they're not getting enough for him. I said, it's funny because 3 years ago the Chiefs made a move for Orlando Brown, and there was one guy, one person, one and one only, that told me this ain't going to work. And I said the only anger around Orlando Brown 3 years ago, the only frustration that came with the acquisition of Orlando Brown 3 years ago was that Jeff Chadiha wouldn't get on board with the acquisition of Orlando Brown. It was the only thing. And trust me, just because, I know I respect Jeff's opinion, so it didn't bother me that Jeff wasn't on board. It made me stop and think, okay, what do we got here? Right? If Jeff disagrees with me or Eric disagrees with me, I take a minute. I don't take it lightly. I go, okay, I need to take a look at this. And I'd like to believe I wasn't. And I think neither Eric or I were as all on board with Orlando Brown as other people were, but we weren't as absolute and resolute that no, don't see it. And Jeff did. And everybody lost their mind on Jeff. And it was
how it went down?
Yes. Am I wrong? Like, didn't you feel
I get maybe. Yeah. Okay.
I mean, I felt like I felt like everybody was just like, oh my God. And it was like, because they didn't want to hear the truth. Right. And the truth was that Orlando Brown is a right tackle that has a quick burst in him. And that's it. Because when Mahomes peels off, he is done. He's like, oh man, look at him run. Yeah. He's not going over to the other side to help him out if he peels back and comes the other way. And so, that's what, Mahomes has got to stop thinking he's got a guy that's going to do anything more than give a decent effort on the first go as a big human being. He's no different than
this is part of, and I'm not to take away from Jeff's flowers here, but like, this is part of being a manager at quarterback, your management. And like, we all have, are in charge of, like, Petro at the state, like in my teams, right? Like I've had in the past, like you have people who are good at different things, right? And then you are the guy that has to patch it all and has to be honest about the players on your team.
Yes.
And I think that sometimes that there's an aspect of that where I think he's honest about the wide receivers, because the difference between the Bengals and the Chiefs is when the teams bring pressure on the Bengals, Burrow's like, all right, Chase, like that's why we spent pick 5 on you. And at least like that was the one thing I liked about the 8-man pressure when he threw it up to Valdez-Scantling, which was, we put $12 million into you, Valdez-Scantling, you better make a catch, right? There needs to be more of that out of Mahomes, and I fear that he just thinks the whole offense is that way, right? And he's kind of got to pitch to the average, where it's just like, well, I got average tackles, I got average wide receivers, I have Travis here, but the other team's taking Travis out. What do I like? That's part of being a great quarterback.
Yeah, but it's also part of being a great play caller. Play Jerick McKinnon. He's your best pass protector, so you can help out on the interior and leave guys in, get another tight end that can block. Come on. I mean, like, just admit who you are and play to those strengths. I think just as a whole, they're still wanting to get back. Like, hey, we're this close to being that 18 offense that's going to score 50. And Jeff, I don't like him. I still think more of the Chiefs probably than you do overall on things. But there are a lot of things that you've said that I think they need to take to heart, and they're just not taking it to heart. I want to get to Travis Kelce and the fumble. Great defensive play. I know you get pissed, Jeff. Pissed. When everybody just calls it mistakes by the offense and doesn't credit the defense. Great defensive play, or maybe a little haphazard with the football and Travis Kelce. Which do you?
I thought it was a great defensive play. And I know that everybody refers to it as if Kelsey doesn't fumble, this is like he just walked down there and just threw the ball up in the air and said, let's see what happens. Like I've never seen him fumble in that situation. So one, it's a great defensive play because he never lets go of the football, and he gets hit from a lot of different angles. It's very hard to catch. Eric was a tight end. Very hard to catch the football at that part of the field, turn your back, go up the field, and not know what's behind you, what's coming your way, all different angles. And Jermaine Pratt hustled over, got his arm. As soon as he got his arm in there, I thought he's got a chance. And Kelsey, unfortunately, couldn't get down. I think he was trying to get down, but I think that the way his body was positioned, maybe they held him up a little bit. But I thought it was the timing of it, the execution of it, and the player involved on the wrong end of it. Yeah, it was a great defensive play. I don't think he could have avoided that happening, no matter what he did.
Yeah, it sucks. It's crushing, Eric, but it's a guy trying to make a play, for crying out loud.
Yeah, a few things about that. First off, the throw by Mahomes on that play was A+. Do you remember that play? I mean, Mahomes like threw that thing around like 4 guys to a guy who's been covered up all game to a guy who was covered on that play. And yeah,
it was kind of like the Brady to Godwin strike, which of course got called back last night.
Yeah.
But you look at it and you're like, oh my God, other than get your head around. I mean, I've said it for a long time. If your guy's covered, but the DB's not looking, he's open.
But I watched that. I'm like, I was pretty much amazed. And then when he got stood up, I'm like as Jeff said, I've been in that position before, and you just got to get down. You saw Kelsey get down on the next drive. No, I mean, Jermaine Pratt made a great play. Like sometimes you do that. And I think also speaking to this, we talk about the Chiefs are prone to these errors in every game, but they're more prone to them in games like this because they need those extra yards against the Bengals, right? And so you risk you go down against the Rams, right? Because you know you're going to get those 4 yards somewhere else. In a game against the Bengals, especially as I've said at the beginning of the show, where you've been outplayed, but you're somehow up and you have a chance to bury them, you try to get those extra yards so I think it was partially game situation, but I also think it was a great play by a Bengals linebacker. And again, let's give the Bengals some flowers here. You're talking about the defense. That second, they were without Chadiha Awuzie, who's the best corner on that team. Cam Taylor-Britt's a draft pick. Eli Apple gets a lot of flack, but he's actually a fairly good player. Hilton, Jesse Bates, Von Bell, they built that secondary with a ton of different players. They drafted linebackers, took the best 2 guys. Jermaine Pratt is the best of them, and then this is not just a Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase team. This is a team that has built a good defense that is also very well schemed, and I think that there's some lessons there for the Chiefs. Lou Almirola, he's going to be a head coach, given how well he's coached this defense. Because I'll be honest, that team's not. We talk about them losing 1-score games early in the year. They're not in those games without the defense, and their defense was the bedrock of this team, and allowing that offense to catch their form. And so, you give that that's a great defense on the other side. Not like 0-2 Bucks, but a great defense.
Yeah, and they do it without, it's not just unleashing Micah Parsons or Aaron Donald. Yeah. It's not like they've got the best guy at every position.
Yeah.
They're really well schemed. They've got a good game plan.
They have no weaknesses. No weaknesses.
Well, but they also, I think they look in the mirror. They don't see Aaron Donald out there. They see Hendrickson. They use him. But, they don't go out there trying to shut you out, right? I think sometimes when you're blitzing all the time, you're trying for the shutout. You're trying for the kill on the quarterback. You're trying for the sack fumble. Sometimes you got to say, look, my job is to give up 3s today. You over there, you're going to have to get some 7s. I'm going to give up 3s today. You go get some 7s. And it feels sometimes like the Chiefs are playing for that perfect game, that ass kicking, that, the let's hang 50 and give up 10 with 7 sacks, and you're just not that team. You've got to acknowledge the deficiencies in your players.
Yeah, and that's the point I was making earlier. They do a lot of stuff that's not sexy. It's not fun for defensive ends to rush up field and just stand there and see what's going to happen.
Yeah,
it's not fun for safeties not to get interceptions. To play deep. And I remember Earl Thomas when he played for Seattle. He was a great player, but he would get pissed off because he couldn't go blitz and hit somebody. It's like they play their parts and they play them well.
All right, guys. What do we? Where do you want to go? Here are the topics, and we're running short on time. AFC's number 1 seed. Justin Reid fires out on Twitter, and we got to make our predictions. What do you want, Jeff? You take.
I'll take top seed.
AFC number 1.
Yeah, I'll take top seed. I think Justin Reid's not.
The Chiefs are going to pound the Broncos. The Broncos.
Yeah.
All right, we're all going to pick the Chiefs. All right, so what do you want? You want Reid or you want number 1 seed in the AFC?
I'll take number 1 seed. I think the Bills are going to get it. I think they're going to keep it. Actually, like I said, I think The Jets playing a backup quarterback, even though he's playing better than Zach Wilson, I still think it's a tough game to win in Buffalo. Dolphins have some injury issues, and I think the way they lost to San Francisco, to me, was alarming. And that being the third game of a 3-game road stretch, I just can't see them winning. I think they are better than the Bengals. And I think once you get to this place, when you've gone through what they've gone through with Josh Allen, his elbow, Von Miller and his knee, all the turnovers, some of the disappointing losses, you get a second shot at having the number 1 seed, you're not going to let it go.
All right. Eric?
It's Kansas City. The Chiefs have, Denver twice, Oakland, Seattle, Houston. What's the floor there? 4-1?
The Raiders at the end don't scare you? I mean, they're essentially a game behind the Bills. The Raiders, you think, is just in the bag the way they're playing right now?
No, it's not in the bag, but I mean, this is a team that always plays better on the road, the Chiefs, right? And the Raiders, I mean, who have the Raiders beaten in their last bit? Chargers suck, right? Who else? Who have the Raiders beaten recently?
Okay, fine. So the Chiefs are on the table. Who do the Bills lose to?
He just disappeared on us.
There he goes. Gone. He hit the wrong button. He pieces out. He pieces out right at the moment of getting things together. All right, there.
No, I'm back. Now I'm on the bottom here. Hold on. So, Chiefs.
Where you belong, by the way.
Look, I know, Curtis. It did not get lost on me that the intro had Jeff first. Just kidding. I'm just joking. I'm just
alphabetical.
That's true. So Buffalo. If Buffalo loses to Cincinnati and the Chiefs win out, this is the 1 seed, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a very clear path. We all gave.
Well, yes, I know any loss and no losses by the Chiefs. Is that what you're saying? The Bengals will beat the Bills?
Well, but also let's look at the Bengals schedule. The Bengals at Cleveland at home is always a tough game for them. At Bucks, I know the Bucks are a privilege, but that's not going to be an easy game. At Patriots, not going to be an easy game. Bills at home, Ravens at home. By that time, Lamar Jackson will be here already, right? So is Cincinnati going to win out?
I think we're talking about this. The Buffalo. You think Buffalo is going to lose Cincinnati?
The Bengals are a wagon too, right? But then
they are. But no, I don't think
Bills,
I don't think you asked the question.
The Bills lost to the Jets already, right? The Bills
Chiefs
lost
to the Colts. Eric, the Chiefs lost to the Colts. You know, I usually end up being on your side of the fence, but Jesus, where are you?
You think the Bills are winning out then?
That's what I said.
I think pointing out that the Bills lost to the Jets is asinine when the team you're saying
okay, the only way, so I get it. The Bills have 3 divisional home games. That's great. The Bills have to basically win those. They have to go 3-0 against those games, right? For that to be, they're
all at home. They're all in Buffalo.
Okay.
The other game is at Bears and at Bengals. I mean, it really does look like what is the spread this week? I haven't even looked. What is the spread this week? In that game, it's got to be 7.
Oh, they'll be favored in all those games.
Yeah,
for sure.
But Petro, let's just do the math. If all those games are independent, for you to have a more than 50% chance of going 3-0, you need to be 80% in all 3 games.
But the Chiefs are.
That's the only reason. That's the only reason I'm pointing out that they've lost to all 3. They've lost to the Dolphins before. They've lost to the Jets before, and
which is all the more reason to say there isn't a snowball's chance in hell they're getting swept by those teams.
I'm saying they're going 2-1,
which means one of them is going to sweep them.
Yeah,
but those games. No, I'm saying those 3 games.
Or you have the Patriots ineptness being the team that's going to rise up and beat them.
Like I said, in order for them to go 3-0 in those games, they have to have an 80% chance to win each of them. At more than a 50% chance of going 3-0, right? I'm telling you, it's less likely than you believe. And even then, they got to beat the Bengals in Cincinnati.
Yeah, but Eric, you're selectively using. By the way, I love how we lost him and he came back and now he's down at the bottom of his screen. Like,
Yeah.
did you knock the computer off? Is that what you did when you went away or something? Listen, the point.
See that pimple?
All the math you're quoting about the Bills isn't really that much different than the math on the Chiefs, right? Like I get it. Houston and Denver. You know what at 8.5, 9.
Dude, somebody tweeted out the other day that Denver was going to score 30 points. I'm like, is this a biblical day or is this a real day?
No, that's not
like,
happening.
Come on.
But Seattle and Vegas, you can't you just throw your helmet.
Yeah, Seattle's an okay football team. Yeah,
and so are the Raiders.
Yeah, I mean Derek Carr.
You can't listen.
If that's a big game, Derek Carr is going to lose that game, Soren.
Tomorrow night, if you join us for the 2D podcast, you will hear Eric Eager drool over the Detroit Lions, who are 5-7.
That's right.
The same record as the Las Vegas Raiders.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
The Lions had a 6.5 win total coming into the year. The Raiders had an 8.5 win total. There are levels, Petro.
Pick the game. Give me your score. Eric, what do you got?
Chiefs. I mean, Denver's not okay. They're going to get back at 31-13. 13's generous too, by the way, for that Broncos football team.
Chiefs 21-10.
Yeah, I'm feeling a little more like that. Give me I think the Chiefs defense will have a day against this Broncos offense. I think there might be an by the way, kick the can. Give me 24-13 Chiefs. I think they get there on the number, but you're nibbling on your nails at the end to see if it gets there. So
there is not a point spread safer in the world than you with Russell Wilson having the ball. I'm sorry.
Again, Asphalt and Concrete, proudly serving the entire KC Metro, proudly bringing you the Red, Gold, and Bold podcast. Look them up if you've got a business, you need any kind of parking work done, whether it's a simple repair or you need the entire parking lot built. No matter how big it is, no matter how simple it is. Again, Asphalt and Concrete, Kansas City's nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor. They got you covered. They got us covered. We'd appreciate you. If you need any paving done, call, again, Asphalt and Concrete, 816-484-3338. Find them online at ganasphalt.com. For Jeff Chadiha from the NFL Network, Eric Eager from Sumer Sports. My name is Soren Petro saying thank you very much for joining us here on Red, Gold, and Bold.